appreciate you coming out to the people of Hawaii Kai. Yes, we greatly appreciate Scott Saiki, the speaker. So the point is, we were at Kona Brewery, and COVID knocked them out, and now it's only a Volkswagen bus where we used to meet. So we went across the way to Greek Marina, and not enough of you were buying food or buying beer, so we had to move again. And fortunately, Robin of the Oahu Club loves community events. She loves the community. Are any of you Oahu Club members, swimmers or otherwise? Okay, good. I said, Robin, you want to come and give a pitch? Please do that. Because this is a beautiful place in Hawaii Kai. And it's a great thing. You can bring whatever you want to bring, just bring yourself. And we have a good discussion. Generally, the format is opening remarks. Speaker generally, and by the way, this is his third time or second time. He'll give 10, 15 minutes opening remarks, and then open questions are for what you have on your mind and what your concerns are. And that's where it becomes really a Joe the plumber and the president. So what are some of these issues we have to understand better? What are some of the things that are not clear about what happened? So everything you wanted to know about the 2024 session that I don't know about, he's going to ask, or he's going to answer. But I will try to supplement and fill in some of the gaps, because I know a lot of you have specific Hawaii Kai questions. If you look at the background, Jillian, we handed out everybody's background, so you know he's a graduate Hawaii Baptist. You know he's a graduate of the University of Hawaii Law School. You know he's a lawyer. Did you know he was one of the sharpest quip, poker face individuals we have in the state capitol? He has a real sense of humor, and I was thinking of what is a typical one of that, and that was when the governor was doing the State of the State, he had to introduce the lieutenant governor. And he said, and now I want to introduce the director of name changes, which is basically what the lieutenant governor does. But it was a great quip. But this is a guy who's got a sense of humor. He's smart, he's sharp. He's the Speaker of the House. Please welcome Speaker Scott Saiki. Scott, it's all yours.
Thanks, Gene. Thank you very much, Gene. Thank you. Hey, thanks everybody for attending tonight. It's not often that people want to get together and talk about the legislative session.
Especially this one.
Thank you very much. So I want to just let you know that Gene mentioned that he's part of the Republican caucus in the House, but I want to let you know that and I tell people this a lot. Sometimes I feel like I work better with the Republican caucus than I do with the Democratic caucus. We have 45 members in the Democratic side.
It's numbers.
And then 6 Republican members. But it's just great working with them. And, the Republican leader, Lauren Matsumoto, is also just great to work with because, the members like Gene, you can just talk with them if there's something that comes up. And even if you disagree, you can still have a conversation with them about it. And you can agree or agree to disagree, and it's not personal. So I really appreciate that, working with members like Gene and the other colleagues in his caucus. So thanks, Gene, for
pleasure
being
We don't have the sense of humor you have, though. We can't compete with that.
So, so we just finished our session. We gavelled out on May 3rd. We started on January 17th. And it was, I think it was kind of a rough session. I think everybody worked really hard. The members were all very focused. It didn't start off on a totally positive note because there were so many unknowns when we started the session in January, right? This was 4 months after the Lahaina wildfire. Mm-hmm. We didn't know what to expect, how the bills were going to be paid, how people were going to be residents were going to be accommodated on Maui. Nobody knew the answers to all of these questions, especially the cost of the recovery. We also didn't know what the state income, the revenue projection was going to be for the year. It changes throughout the 4 months that we're in the session. I mean, there were a lot of issues that were not resolved when we started the session, And we didn't really know the answers until we got closer to the end. So for example, on the Lahaina wildfire issue, it was only towards in April that we realized what dollar amounts the state would have to pay for the Lahaina recovery versus what FEMA, what the feds, and what the counties were going to pay, and what the share was. So, but having said that, at the end of the day, at the end of the session, there were some really historic bills that were approved. The income tax cut bill that was approved. That was the first. That was the largest tax cut in the history of the state, and the income tax brackets were adjusted. It's the first time they were adjusted, I think, in 30 years.
Or
30
longer
years,
even. Yeah.
along with the adjustments to the standard deduction. So what happened was, over time, over those 30, 35 years, as interest increased, inflation increased, the brackets were not adjusted to account for that. So people who are maybe earning less were actually paying more in taxes. So that was a complete overhaul. It's going to be phased in over 6 years. We tried to address property insurance. I know there's going to be questions tonight about condo insurance. I'm pretty sure. Yes. Okay. So I'll spend a couple minutes on that right now, because this is. So in November, I got some calls from people who work in different industries like real estate, and they said, "Hey Scott, there's a problem going on now with property insurance." And I represent the Kakako district, the high-rise district, and I didn't know what was happening. All I knew was that my insurance, the premium was increasing and our maintenance fee was increasing. But I didn't know that basically climate change, natural disaster risk was affecting the cost of insurance, property insurance. And this is happening it's a national, as you know, it's a national issue. It is not just a Hawaii issue. It's the risk of hurricane and fire. Lahaina put Hawaii on the map as a wildfire risk. And then for condos, I don't know who lives in a high rise here, but the water loss risk is also a big factor. So all of these are driving up the cost of insurance. There are only 3 property insurance carriers in Hawaii right now that are doing business: Fireman's Fund, Dongu, and First Insurance Company of Hawaii. The state cannot control whether an insurance company remains here or whether an insurance company that is here decides to stop issuing policies. So we can't control that. And we're actually kind of fortunate that, because a couple of months ago there was a rumor that one of these companies was thinking of leaving the state, and that hasn't happened yet. So we're kind of fortunate in that sense. But we know that property insurance is a big concern for condo residents. It is also affecting townhouses now, because one of the insurance companies is not going to be issuing policies for wooden A-framed townhomes because of fire risk. We're not sure yet if this is going to start to impact, although we are getting some anecdotal reports that it's now affecting single-family homes. But again, this is a national issue, and what we're basically seeing is the financial side of climate change and natural disaster risk. It's something that, like for me, I always thought there's always going to be the physical, aspects, right, of climate change or natural disaster risk or temperature changes. But now we're seeing the financial impact, and it's occurring through insurance rates, insurance premiums. We did work on a bill throughout the session to try to see if we could provide some stopgap temporary coverage, because what's happening is, and condo buildings in particular that are underinsured need additional sources of insurance so that they can cover that gap. So we had a proposal to provide temporary coverage through 2 existing insurance funds that were created by the state, the Hawaii Hurricane Relief Fund and the Hawaii Property Insurance Association. And the concept was to just provide a loan to these two funds to seed these funds so that they could then go out and purchase reinsurance that could then be sold to condo buildings. So this bill got all the way through to the end of session. It was a House bill. We worked on it very, very diligently with all the House members. And then at the very end, some of the senators wanted to do a study. So the bill died. But the governor just announced a couple of weeks ago that because this is on his radar screen, the governor announced that he will be forming a working group to continue the assessment of this insurance issue in Hawaii. And he's going to want this working group to come up with some recommendations on what can be done over the summer, at least on an administrative level, and then to also maybe propose legislation, because the governor is willing to convene a special session. He's willing to call the legislature back into a special session if the circumstances get worse and worse and worse, and if there is a potential, at least temporary legislative fix. So he has not officially created it.
Speaker, that is good news, possible special session, because when I had an interview with the Hawaii Association of Realtors, they said wait till it gets near the end of summer. It's the kind of not the jet lag, it's the lag between when information and then when prices go up, when the people realize that, oh my God, this is 1,000 increase, unacceptable. They said the intensity is going to really be felt at the end of the summer. So I'm glad that it's not for sure a special session, but you're talking about it. That is really good news.
Yeah, and it's really, it's just really, people need to be aware of what's happening and what the ramifications are, because, if you are in a condo building and you don't get 100% coverage, let's say for hurricane risk, you're not at 100%, then the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac rules kick in, because Freddie and Fannie require 100% of coverage for your building. So if you're not at 100%, then the lenders may not lend on that building, on the units, which means that if you want to sell your unit to someone who needs a mortgage, that the buyer may not be able to get a mortgage for that building. You'd have to find a cash buyer. I represent Kaka'ako. I was talking with residents a couple weeks ago, and one of them lives in a building, and she told me that her building is underinsured. So when she went to apply for a HELOC, she was denied because they're underinsured. I had another resident who was from a building in my district. It only opened a year ago. It's a new building. It's a year old. They're underinsured, and they're on a do not lend list at a couple of the local banks. So this is affecting all kinds of people, but it's particularly going to affect people who live in buildings that are 30 years old, 25 years old, the older buildings that also require some infrastructure work, right, on water pipes, fire sprinklers, right, those kinds of that kind of infrastructure. So we just have to all be aware of what's happening. But we'll be working on this over the summer with the governor.
Speaker, could we get a read of the audience? How many of you live in condominiums? Could you raise your hands? Okay, good, 50%. Okay, Speaker, you got the right audience. Like your Kaka'ako audience, this is the Hawaii Guy high rise.
And have you folks seen increases?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How about 328% for a townhouse?
Speaker, you want to go Q&A or you want to finish?
Yeah, we can do Q&A.
You want to go Q&A? Okay. Could you speak loudly or come up to the microphone if you really want to be heard?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead,
We
sir.
live in a small townhouse community with some single-family homes, about 81 units. Our insurance went from $159,000 a year to $549,000.
Repeat those numbers again.
$159,000 to $509,000. So our maintenance fee, my maintenance fee is $781 a month. It's probably going to go up to $1,600 plus a month. That's another mortgage.
Right. Right.
So that's how, I just want you to get an idea of how the impact is on a lot of families.
Right.
Not just in Hawaii Kai and Kalama Valley, but throughout the state of Hawaii. It's a lot more that we hope can be done and quickly. A special session is something that definitely needs to happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Speaker, are those comparable to the Kakako increases where, in effect, you've got two mortgages by the amount of monthly outflow?
Right. There's a couple more, some more questions.
Yes. Yes, madam.
Hi, I'm with the same property that Bob is. We have no electrical problems, we have no elevators, we have no pools, we have nothing basically other than a park in terms of our outside community. And we are actually located across from the Hawaii Kai Golf Club. There's a huge field in front of us. And we were told by FEMA, because we've been trying to explore other insurance aspects, that because we were only 6/10 of a mile,
6/10 of a what?
6/10 of a mile from what they consider to be a flood zone,
Yeah.
tsunami zone.
Yeah, the
but
tsunami.
Our area is as far as Hawaii Kai is concerned, is a non-tsunami. So
Right.
it's very confusing why we just have this kind of an increase for what's happening. It's totally out of perspective. A townhome and a single-family home community should not be under the same guidelines, which is my concern, as high-rise condos are.
Speaker, what are the mechanics that if there was a special session, we could interface, and you said get reinsurance? How can the relief of this first example, then I'll get right to you, sir.
Yeah. So what's happened? So in March, an organization went to Lahaina to do an inspection. It was a property insurance trade group, and they went there to assess what was happening, and they came back and met with me and told me that, and this was a group from California, but they said that, property insurers going forward, and I guess it's going to be done through the underwriting process, are going to start, and they're referring to single family homes, are going to start looking at things like lot size, proximity between structures, yard size, foliage, all those kinds of factors are going to come into play when the property insurers set the rate, set rates.
There are also steel frame buildings.
Yeah.
And when apparently somewhere in the story about buildings, we're considered to be under, which everybody assumes we're a wood frame building.
Oh, but it's steel frame?
It's a steel frame building. It's only concrete base. We don't have that, the same
Yeah.
concrete as a high-rise frame, as far as the walls are concerned.
Does-
The frames
yeah.
are steel frame.
Did the insurance broker go out and try to find other options? Okay, because this is where the role of the insurance broker is going to be is just really important.
But no matter where we went, we tried to improve what we got.
Yeah.
We've got to bring the FEMA situation.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
too close to that, so we couldn't guarantee mortgage rates.
Okay.
But the whole thing for our community is just.
Okay, the
Yeah,
next
question.
question, and then you, sir. Go ahead. Loudly, please.
My name's Tim, and I attended your McKinley High School forum, and that forum had several experts in the field of insurance, mortgages, condo management. It was a very good series, very informative. I think, from my perspective, the problem is well defined, but the solutions seem to be limited at best. And I guess one of the questions is, to what degree can the state be, and I don't know if it's a financial partner or a facilitative partner, to encourage a self-insurance pool as well. I know that Niki was similar to where we're at now, where all the insurance carriers left the state, and some associations did come together as a self-insured pool. I don't know if that is an option that can be discussed, and I don't know how much money it would require to become self-insured, but I just worry about trying to attract outside insurance companies, and they have to pay into to use a poker term, ante up, in order to insure. And I don't know if 1.7 million population is sufficient for them to be incentivized to do that.
Right. Thanks for raising that. That's a good point. That's a good suggestion. I'm pretty sure the governor's task force is going to be looking at some kind of a captive self-insured program for condos. I think there are about 400 condos registered in our state. The model would follow for a self-insured program would follow the HEMEC workers' comp program, which is a self-insured captive fund. The thing is that I think that the buy-in might be high, because I think you'd have to be able to recapitalize, let's say $100 million to start off, which is $250,000 per condo, right, per project.
Speaker, can I follow up with that one? Because the Hurricane Relief Fund still exists. Jillian, how much money is still in the Hurricane Relief Fund? I mean, multiple millions. I mean, I'm going to pull the age card. I was one of the only guys in the legislature today that was when Iniki came in 1992. We created the Hurricane Relief Fund, which, to my understanding, Speaker, was if anything catastrophic took place, the government would fill in between the private sector and the consumer.
Yeah.
Isn't that something we can do now for just condo owners rather than hurricane relief?
Yeah, so the Hurricane Fund was created by the legislature after Hurricane Iniki.
Yeah, 92.
When the insurance companies
all ran away.
Left Hawaii. So that was meant to fill in the gap. And then since then, about in the early 2000s, the insurers started to return to Hawaii. So the Hurricane Relief Fund is now inactive. It's been inactive for about 20 years. There is a fund balance there of about $160 million.
160. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Jillian, you got that? 160 million. Okay, but the point is there is money to seed that reinsurance issue. And I think as the speaker is indicating, when the governor puts this working group together, you've got a pile of money by which you can add on to and actually insure these companies. Don't run away from Hawaii like my wife and I just learned that we don't have any hurricane insurance anymore. We live in Upper Hahione Valley. And
Can I just emphasize a couple of points? One is that the funds, if we approve anything, the funds would be seeded, right? Basically, it would be a loan, because the concept is that once the fund is seeded, then that fund will go out. If it's a hurricane relief fund, they could go out, purchase reinsurance, and then sell that back to condos. So condos would basically be buying a policy from HHRF, paying premiums into HHRF. So the funds, it kind of circulates. The second thing to remember, which is kind of important, is that, because I want to be realistic about this, there's no way that the state funds can provide 100% coverage. There's just no way. You have 400 condos in our state. So if anything, it would provide a layer of potential coverage, a layer of coverage, and it may be just as expensive as what's out on the market, but at least you'll be dealing with a layer that's from here in Hawaii versus a layer that's from some secondary source outside on an international level. So I want to make those 2 points clear to everyone.
And he's also saying that in our profession, we're supposed to under-promise and over-deliver. So you've heard an under-promise, and hopefully he can over-deliver from that. Sir, you had a question.
My understanding is that
Could you stand up and speak a little louder so people behind you can hear also?
my understanding is that each condominium has a designated representative personnel, or insurance personnel, a designated. He's the only one who can acquire insurance for the building. Only one person per building. That smacks, to me, of the guys that had franchises for the state in the old days, and if you wanted to buy something, you had to buy something through him or his designated representative. So this is a really complicated issue. The board of directors want to know a couple of things. They want to know if they don't have fire sprinklers. They want to know what the insurance is going to cost with fire and sprinklers or without. And if they go without, what can they do? What can the insurance guy tell them to do to reduce their insurance premium?
Okay.
So far, that's come on deaf ears. They can't get those answers.
Okay, we will give you some answers right now because you have raised a number of really important issues.
I've never heard of you can only deal with one person. That sounds
That's it.
sounds off
My,
the
so
wall.
my understanding. So basically, the buck stops with the association board. In most cases, right? It's the board that's going to make decisions. The board selects the broker. The broker presents options to the board, and the board has to make a decision on what kind of insurance to obtain. So it's going to be at the board level, right? The second,
But only one guy can provide insurance for the.
it's up to the board how they want to deal with. Someone mentioned Sue Savio. She's like, she's the busiest one I think in the state now. But yeah, it's up to the board. It's up to the board. So that's the second point. Is that what's going to be important going forward, and I think what this insurance issue has kind of highlighted for all of us, it's the role of the association board, the role of the board. It's going to be so important for the boards and the management companies to understand what is happening now. They have to understand what's happening, and they have to take the time to just think through all of the options, go through the analysis and come up with options and just make the best decisions. It's hard, and it's hard for association. It's like the legislature. We don't want to raise people's taxes, right? And maybe Gene
Not
does
on my
once in a
side
while,
of the
but-
aisle. I don't.
No,
Your
I don't
side
wanna
of the
raise
aisle.
taxes.
No, we're not going to get into that.
But,
My thing is
it's
that
hard.
The insurance companies will only talk to the designated representative. It's the insurance companies who
I
talk
think-
to him.
I think you should. I think.
No, I think you don't understand.
The lady behind you thinks that you don't understand, sir, because she.
We had that issue, and we delayed actually, paying because we thought we had a 30-day time period before we pay this, and we went out to outside insurance companies.
Okay, let me ask this: how many of you guys are on the insurance board, or the board of governors, or the board of AOA board of directors? Only 1, 2, 3 of you. For those kind of questions, could you consult with him after the speaker and his issues are done? Okay, next question, Mr. Young.
The third
Go
third
ahead.
issue that you raised, I wanted to mention is.
Go ahead.
The question was, well, if we don't have fire sprinklers, then what do we do? Because should we install fire sprinklers to bring down the cost, right? But how many buildings here don't have fire sprinklers? Okay. Yeah, I mean the buildings that are older don't. So we approved another bill that actually was signed into law about a week ago, and it's going to help condos that need to make these kinds of repairs. It's called the C-Pacer bill, and basically the concept is that under this program, condo associations can get a private loan to pay for infrastructure repairs, improvements, and then amortize the loan over the life of the improvement. But the loan will be repaid by the condo unit owners through an assessment on their real property tax. So the condo owners will be paying this assessment over time. But if a condo unit owner moves, if you sell your unit and move out of the building, then the new unit owner would assume that payment. Okay, so it's a pay-as-you-go system. So there's a couple, and this program will cover improvements like fire sprinklers, water pipes, energy efficient measures like lighting, plumbing, air conditioning. So there's a number of capital improvements that can be financed through this program. There's 2 immediate benefits to this. So as I mentioned earlier, one is that it's amortized, it's a pay-as-you-go system. So that avoids large front-end assessments. There's no front-end assessment on the current owners. And the second is that it's a pay-as-you-go, as I mentioned. If you move, the new owner takes over the payments. So it really kind of balances out the payment schedule.
So it allows you to fix your condo, but it also increases what you have to pay back the debts. It's not going to be free money, but the fact
Yeah.
that you can borrow the money is, I think, the leveraging point here.
This program, the CPACE program, is gonna take effect. We're looking at July 1st, so in about a month, it'll take effect. The state office that administers it is already receiving phone calls from condos trying to apply for this program. So they're working really hard to get it started. But I would just encourage, condos and the boards to really look at this program. If your building needs improvements, you should really look at this program and utilize it if it's possible.
What's the name of the program again?
CPACER, CPACER, CPACER. And go to the Department of Business and Economic Development website for information on this program.
Okay, next question, Mr. Young.
Yeah, hi, I'm Peter. Speaker, I'm a demographer by training, and so I look at population ebb and flow on a regular basis. For the last 5 years, we've been losing about 13,000 citizens to wherever, mostly to the mainland. I guess it's a two-part question. What's the legislature even thinking about in terms of mitigating this outflow? And it's at various levels, so we can go all night, I'm sure. But second, you talked about taxes early on here this evening. By reducing all the taxes, and trust me, it's wonderful. I like it. But in 6 years, if we go the current trend of losing population that we are currently, those tax cuts are going to have to be reinstated. Not tax cuts, tax raises. We're just going to have to raise taxes. We won't have the people to pay for all of these things. So it's answer what you want to. But I'm concerned about our dropping population and then how we're going to pay for everything.
You want me to handle that? No. The governor was asked that in his press conference when he announced the tax. And he had a demographer and an economist explain it in beautiful terms, of which I don't remember because it was in language that went above my head. Speaker, you want to take it? You're going to answer. The point is...
My answer is, Rep. Ward knows the answer.
You're getting me on really my soapbox because we've got to diversify our economy. See, all we do is cut the pie smaller and smaller. We got to grow the pie. Speaker, and you've heard this on the floor so many times in my speeches, we are in the precipice of being the Hollywood of the Pacific. We have got people demanding to come here, except we are so economically unwise that Georgia and Kentucky are beating us out. They are the two stars in the nation. But Speaker, that's another issue. But the point is, we got to have high-paying jobs. We got to diversify the economy. Right now, and I'm going to give you the platform that the governor had. ALICE families, asset limited income challenged earners, i.e., the working poor, 63% of the Hawaiian community. Hawaiian families are ALICE families. That's totally unacceptable. Half of our population is living in poverty. We are the stewards in the governing of this place. If half of you guys don't have enough food, or a roof over your head and food on the table, we're not doing our job. Speaker, this is really getting me riled up now. Because I feel so strongly. If you were a physician, Dr. Otto, are you here? If half of your patients never got healed or never got out of being sick, what would they say about you as one who can manage their health? I feel the same way about economics. We've got to be able to help the Hawaiian community, but everybody who can't afford a roof over their head and food on the table, we're not doing our job. Sorry, that was an editorial, Speaker.
So I think, I might be wrong, but I think that in the 1960s, maybe 1970s, Hawaii kind of had this unofficial policy to limit housing development in order to limit population. And I think that, in hindsight, I'm not sure if that's true, I'm not sure if that was the right call, because now we're definitely seeing the impact of that. I really believe that housing cost is the number one driver, is housing cost. we just don't have enough inventory. And then second, as you know, Gene mentioned, it's wages. Wages are driving people out of Hawaii. I saw a news report last night. You may have seen it. It was on medical professionals who feel that they're also underpaid in Hawaii and are leaving the state because of that. So it's happening across the board. And that's one reason why we finally decided to move out the income tax cut bill. What has happened over the last maybe 12 years is income tax collections have slowly started to decrease, but general excise tax has increased. General excise tax has increased, hotel room tax collections have increased. So we've already started seeing this trend from 10, 12 years ago, right, where you're seeing less income tax being paid in the state, and that's because of, probably a lot of it was because of out migration, right, and lower wages. So, that's just what happened over time. So,
Speaker, when you mentioned housing, you were bumping up against another issue that a lot of people here have a concern. It is SB 3202, the high density, more ADUs, 2, 3, 4 of them, and it's going to make Hawaii Kai other than what Hawaii Kai is right now. Do any of you want to ask the question specifically, other than how we're going to become more Hong Kong in density-wise? If you want to build 2 or 3 ADUs, this bill that just passed is going to allow that. If big moneyed mainland guys come in and they say, hey, I'm not going to do an Airbnb, I'm going to become a mini developer. I'm going to put 3 ADUs on my property. And people think, well, that's going to drive prices down. No, it's going to be the same high demand for the cost of the housing. $1.2 million is still the median level. Okay, 3202. Or Kay, go ahead. You ask your question.
This is back to insurance.
Okay, back to insurance. I know that's top of mind. Go ahead.
I saw where you put in $200
Louder, please.
$200 million in the next fiscal year, which would be July 1st, for insurance claims in Lahaina. Is that true? It was in the paper.
Speaker, you want to repeat the question so they'll
the
hear?
question was whether we approved the $200 million appropriation for Lahaina-related insurance claims.
Did we?
No, we didn't. That was the rainy day fund. We set aside $200 million for the rainy day fund.
Then it was reported incorrectly in the paper.
And if I may, not an editorial, but during Iniki we had a $3 billion bailout, if you will. The estimates for Maui are $6 billion. We, Speaker, came out with, 1.3? We're really lowballing it. I don't think we've heard the last of Maui and the amount of money they need. And quite frankly, Maui is strong, but they're also divided in terms of how they should do what and who should be governing it. So, Speaker, I think it's a bit wobbly in terms of Maui's recovery. They don't have the money, nor do they have the stability of the governance. And that's only my opinion, but I just don't see the stuff where it's like what Kauai wanted, we gave them, they built it, they got back on their feet, and I'm not sure if Maui's going to be able to do that.
Well, my position is that the Maui County government needs to take the lead, needs to provide the leadership on how Maui is going to be redesigned. It has to come from Maui County.
Okay, and we're still waiting for that, actually. There was another question somewhere right in front of me.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Speaker. My question is about the, Ahmed Jones, my question is about the legislative process. And I appreciate that you came, approximately 2 years ago, and we had talked then in detail of the legislative process. I think there has been a lot of improvement in this last session on the process. With that said, example, Act 17, SB 2919, reforms on the Zoning Enabling Act. In conference, a provision was inserted that fundamentally changed the meaning of the bill. Doing this really nullified the effect of the public effort in testifying on the bills and going to all the readings and sitting at the state capitol and meeting with our representatives. One of them even proposed a amendment to this bill.
That's the one he voted down.
Which bill is this?
The floor amendment.
2919. It was intended to bring home rule to the counties when it came to zoning, and the main line of thinking was around short-term rentals.
Yeah, short-term.
Oh, the
rental.
short-term rental
Yeah.
bill.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I just do not remember bill numbers.
Yeah.
I remember the content, but I do not remember numbers at all.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay, so thank you. It became Act 17. And so, my concern about this is after we go through all this effort, and then you hold a conference committee, and then that conference committee does legislation, so they basically have a meeting and decide the outcome. How does that, that discourages us. Okay. So my question really is, what can be done moving forward to restrict the jurisdiction of a conference committee to the intended purpose, which is reconciliation?
Okay, so couple things. The first thing is on the bill itself, Senate Bill 2919,
Yes.
short-term rental bill. It
Or
basic,
HB 1838 was
yeah.
sort of the companion.
So basically, that bill will allow the county governments explicitly to regulate short-term rentals because right before we went into the legislative session, there was a federal court ruling here in Hawaii, and the ruling was that the counties didn't have as much flexibility as we thought. So we amended the statute to allow for county regulation. I don't know what happened in conference, but I will tell you this for the House. This is the House. Gene knows this. You have to back me up on this.
Speak, sir.
Gene knows that the House has made a number of changes in how we deal with this situation where members try to stick things into bills at the very last minute. I have told the members that I will not take a bill to the floor when I learn that has happened. And that we have not taken bills to the floor as a result. We also have we started a practice this year in the House that when we're in conference committee at the end of the session, when we're in conference committee, that before voting on a measure in conference committee, the House chair needs to explain in public at the table what is in the bill, the content of the bill before the vote is taken. I mean, we've done a number of things to really open up the process and to explain to people what we're doing, and we've also taken a hard line on these abuses that have occurred.
Speaker, I will back you up 95% up until the last 5%, where there is one structural flaw that he hasn't mentioned, but I will mention. In our system of voting, in our committees, if a person called the chair wants to kill a bill, he doesn't have to ask anybody anything, anytime, anywhere. In fact, there's a guy in prison now who used to brag, I can kill a bill anytime I want. And I won't talk about his name, Kalani English. But it was where he, in effect, was bragging because structurally, Speaker, we have it where if they want to pass a bill, everybody gets a vote. And they can vote it down. But if the chair of the committee doesn't like the bill, he can kill it. I would love to see that reformed. I didn't tend to piggyback on this, but that's one of the structural things that happens in conferences. And by the way, do you think there's any egos in the House or the Senate? Sometimes when they're across from each other, I remember Clayton, he in his cowboy hat and his boots would come in, he'd swagger in, and he didn't take control. Anybody who would challenge him, it was like dead city. And I've always, and some of you will remember David Stegmeyer, the Democrat who represented this area before. He and Rod Tam were both chair of education, And on the eve of the conference committee ending, they almost went fisticuffs because they disagreed so vehemently. And both of them had very strong positions that they had. But those are kind of, the sausage making analogy when you're making law. It's really messy, and egos get in it, and all kinds of data gets in. Speaker gets in there. Everybody has their 2 cents. But somehow, the 2,000 bills that we have in the beginning come out to be about 200 bills in the end. And that's why he nor I can remember numbers of bills. There's just too many to do that. Speaker, you want to comment, or should we go to another question?
Question.
Sir, okay, we'll do second round in a second after this one. Go ahead.
I would like to know, I spent the whole spring analyzing bills, writing testimony, writing talking points, and at most of the committee hearings, there would be a group of backslapping, sneery smile people come in and sit down, and we knew who they were. And 70% of the input on all of these things, committee after committee after committee, would be 70%, this is 2919, against passage. That's the will of the people. However, committee after committee after committee voted with the other group, the 30%. I would like to know why we even have a legislature with all of these accoutrements and all of these provisions for public input when we try to be heard, but nobody's listening.
Well, I'll give an example of another bill, because as Gene mentioned, there's 2,000 bills are introduced in the House every year, and not every bill
short-term rental bill.
Not every bill is heard. But I'll give you an example of a bill that was, heard and was taken to the floor for a vote for the first time in probably modern history. This was the recreational marijuana bill. Recreational marijuana, prior to this year, we've never voted on that bill. But this year we did. And, my feeling was that it was time to just take a vote on it. Members knew where they stood on it, and we should just vote on it. And we did. And we voted on it twice on the floor. It was a margin of 2 votes each time, and it was pretty clear that the bill didn't have the support of the majority of the House. So it eventually died. But, I just want to say that there are, that the House has made a concerted effort to hear bills that have never been heard before. And they're controversial, and they're tough votes, but we voted on them.
But that doesn't explain why, when you do have lots of public input on a bill, and the public input is against the passage of the bill, and yet the committee votes for it. It just doesn't register as logical.
Speaker, let me take a bite at that. There's a saying that says, when the people lead, the politicians follow. When there is a certain intensity that's reached at the legislature, the politicians fall in line. And I think with what Prosecutor Alm and a lot of the mayors, a lot of the police departments, they had a critical mass that developed that said, hey, we're not going to numb and dumb down with recreational marijuana. And that's why it failed. But with only a few in a hearing, that's not enough momentum to really leverage what otherwise is the representatives supposedly doing their off
We
their.
had 1,700 pages of written testimony.
And I've surveyed this district. 57% did not want did not want marijuana. They wanted medical marijuana, but not marijuana. So it's the democratic process working its way through. But I think what I'm trying to say is that you are empowered so much to where if the legislators hear you, they will act upon the numbers. They won't act on smaller numbers. Even though a hearing has 25 or 50 people, that's not enough to sway a whole legislative body of, in this case, 51 reps representing 1.4 million people. I say that to encourage you to stay in the whole process of having the public leading and the politicians follow. That's the way the democracy has worked.
They're not going to do that if they're afraid of the government.
They're
Yeah.
afraid of the government.
They're afraid of the government.
Yes. This is an enabling act. People are afraid of their county government.
Okay, with the Airbnb, that's a very hot, controversial issue. Okay, we're going to go to round two, to the gentleman behind you, then Peter. Or no, we have for the first time. Round one, please. The lady with the white mask on.
But I'm changing the subject, unfortunately.
Yes, you have the right to change the subject.
Yeah, my name is Sandy, and
Sandy, you want to take the microphone?
no, you can hear me, I think.
No.
I'll take the
Yeah, it can almost reach there without any difficulty. Okay, then.
Okay. I hope I'm not going to upset the apple cart here, but I would like to know. I have two questions. One, why did 36,000 gallons of raw sewage just flow by my house into the ocean? Because in researching it, I found out that it's been going on for years. And every time I tried to call somebody to find out why or what was going on, I didn't get anywhere. Nobody would put me through to anybody. So it's a hush-hush kind of situation. Does anybody else here live on the marina? Because it's disgusting. I couldn't go out of my house. It smelled so bad. 36,000 gallons of raw sewage. And nobody's doing anything to fix the problem because it's been going on for years. And apparently, in my research, I found out that it's going on in a couple of other parts of the island, like Kailua. And out there. Yeah. And this is despicable for Hawaii. Hawaii has the most beautiful oceans I've ever seen in my life. And to think that that sewer went into it. And the same response I got, one of the responses I did get, was, well, they posted signs not to swim in the marina. Well, there were people swimming out at the end of the marina that didn't see those signs. So that's one question. Can you answer that question? Before I go to my second one?
I think you're going to punt it to me because this.
It's also a city. I mean, it's a city. It's a city issue.
Jillian, have we had a marina emails, calls? We just sent out a flyer, a newsletter that says, "You ask, we act," and this is part of what this Beer Summit is about. It's a forum of leadership, but it's also constituent services. I did not know that was the case. That's a little bit outside my district, but I do international, national, neighborhood and everything. So we are going to be on this. Jillian, I want you to speak with her afterwards. This sewage, I've never heard that much flowing out.
Years. This has been going on for years.
Okay, so why has it not got to the...
People went from door to door and told us to stay out of the water.
Nobody would even answer
Okay,
my calls.
I thought you stood up and said that you lived at Red Hill the way you were making the question. I thought, oh my God, what?
It's also,
Okay.
it's a city. The city manages the wastewater, the sewer system.
Actually,
It's
we
a
have our
city.
own private one. We have our
It's
own
private?
private sewer system. We have.
This is a
Lee Mansfield, are you here? Hawaii American Waters. I saw him. Where's Lee? Lee Mansfield.
Oh, it's
I saw him earlier in the parking lot. We are sewer served by Hawaii American Waters. Not cheap, but efficient. And that's something we're going to look into. Jillian, afterwards, we're going to get
I have
to.
a second
Oh, second. Okay, second question.
It's a beauty.
That was just a warm up first one. Huh?
That was, because I was just wondering if anybody else had experienced what I experienced, because it was awful.
Okay, number two.
Anyway, number two. This will probably be in. But I would like to know why FEMA. I'm from Maui, and I was there the day of the fire. And I was horrified about what happened. Needless to say, 37 years of my life were there. But I ended up losing my home because of FEMA. FEMA is calling landlords and asking them to please get rid of the tenants they have at the end of their lease so that they can take the people out of the hotels and put the people in, and they're offering them twice as much money as they're being paid. My rent was doubled, and that's why everybody on Maui is leaving Maui, and they're all going, oh, I wonder why everybody's leaving. Nobody, how can FEMA, a federal agency, make homeless people out of people who pay rent so that homeless people can move in? And then they're going to leave anyway in 18 months, and then the landlord's not going to get any money. because there won't be any people to rent because everybody's leaving. We all know everybody's leaving Hawaii. They're leaving Maui in hordes. And it's sad. And it's because of our federal government. Well, how does this happen?
Heavy question, Speaker. I know you're not FEMA. I'm not FEMA. The feds are FEMA, but there's some logic in that they're trying to get the people who are hurt the most rather than those who are stable as renters. Well, yeah, it's the unintended consequences.
Yeah, I'm not sure how FEMA set the rates. I think they went through some kind of consultation process, but it was also, the rates that were set with hotels, right, to house people in hotels. That was a high rate as well. It was above the rack rate. But yeah, I'm not sure what process FEMA went through to set rates.
And you're right, they were very high, and it upset the market for sure. Sir, question round number 2.
Oh, round one. I think he has a question.
Oh, we have a round.
one.
Oh, sorry, round 1. Sir, please.
I read in the paper a few weeks ago, I can't remember exactly getting old, but the legislature allotted $25 million to set up this.
A little closer.
To set up a dental task force to look at the problem again. I worked on that issue way back in the year 2000 of fluoridation of the drinking water. I thought for many years, I worked at the shipyard, oh, how lucky I am because it's a good thing. But as an engineer, I did a review myself and found out, hey, this is hazardous material they're putting in the drinking water. Not very smart, okay? And my suggestion before was, if people want fluoridation, fill up a bottle of water, give them the pill, put it in, and those who want it, get it, and it's controlled. Those who react to it, from a health issue or allergy, they can stop. But once you put it in the drinking water, everybody suffers. It's like me now, I have end-stage renal disease. This means what? I have to buy bottled water the rest of my life? Okay, I mean, $25 million and you still haven't solved the problem from 20 years ago? I mean, this you talked about your job is to stop wasting tax dollars, and I agree with that. I mean, they can think of a better way to solve the problem, because here's my suggestions, okay? The two main issues which causing most of the cavities, many immigrants don't know about dental care, so you have to educate them, okay? The other main issue that just came out in a published study in 2017, this person did a review of all the pH in many of the different beverages. You know what pH is, acidity. And unbelievably, many of the carbonated beverages like Coke and Pepsis and all that stuff is highly corrosive to the teeth. So imagine, okay, the problem is not whether there's enough fluoride in the water or not. The problem is parents don't know that this is the cause of the problem, that will eat up the enamel of the primary teeth. So either you got two options on that. Mandate that they put a warning on the soda pops to say, hey, you give a child this, it's gonna eat up their teeth, okay? Which I think would be a good idea. But or put a heavy tax on the sodas.
So let me.
But don't waste 25 million of our tax dollars going to the same thing we're going 20 years ago. I mean, I spent 4 years in the legislature. You were there. The bill that Sam Sloan, that bill almost passed. Okay, it went to the Senate, got the full approval, went to 2 House committee hearings, and was stuck in caucus because somebody in the caucus said, hey, it's a Republican bill. I voted I never, in my 30 years in the legislature, I've never voted to support a Republican bill. You know, you guys have to stop thinking them versus us kind of thing. You guys are public servants. Okay, let's earn your pay. Do your job.
Do you know how much money we get, guys? 72,000.
Okay, let me clarify 3 points.
Okay.
3 points. So first, we did approve a bill that was introduced by Representative Lauren Matsumoto this year.
Yeah, we did. He went all the way, and it's signed by the governor,
The governor
right?
signed it.
Yeah.
So that was Rep. Matsumoto's, the GOP leader's bill. Second, we did appropriate funds this year to restore some adult dental services for people who are in the Medicaid program. So that was what the funding was for. And third, we do not fluoridate. We don't have a law that requires fluoridation here.
Yeah.
We don't have a law that does that, so we don't do that.
2 years ago, one of the
Super controversial.
But it's
Yeah,
an
very
example of
controversial.
where you have the testimony is 10-1 in opposition to fluoridation, and then the bill dies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's very controversial because, as you said, it's a hazardous waste, in effect, toxic to the body.
Yeah.
And some people say in the dosage that it's
Question.
given on the mainland in the water, it works, but
There's a
hey,
question.
we know what to play with.
Question.
Where are we? The question.
I'm still on one.
Okay, round number one, madam.
Someone-
Can you shout it out?
Yeah,
I don't
so
think my
name is
cord is long
Saiki, and
enough.
I just have a question about back to housing again.
Could you stand up and speak a little louder?
Yeah, what percentage of our housing do you know is owned by foreign investors and speculators? Because is it unconstitutional to have some kind of control over that? Because you see in the local news this whole thing about a disastrous housing situation and homeless situation, and then right behind it is an ad for some luxury condominium for $15 million in Waikiki or something. And it just seems like Hawaii has been this place where people just kind of drive by and just buy stuff, and that was well known in the 80s and 90s, right? When a Chinese developer, remember, used to drive around and just buy up housing.
Japanese.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Let's get our crazy rich Asians correct here. You know.
Trent and I all look the same.
So sorry. So I just wondered, just remember this guy that used to drive around in a limousine and buy housing. But is there any control that we could have since we have this huge housing crisis? Is it unconstitutional to control who can just buy up and speculate?
Speaker is a lawyer. I'm sure he's going to give the AG's view. Yeah. We have been talking about that in the legislature for years, but the AG usually kind of stops us in our tracks when we get to the point where this is actually unconstitutional. Go ahead,
We're
Speaker.
in a critical situation, and we have investors and speculators buying the housing that we need to house people.
Speaker?
We need to keep the ag land and open space at the same time, so it's a dilemma.
Yeah, there's some legal issues with restricting who you can sell property to. And for one thing, it's from the seller's perspective, the ability to enter into contracts, right, with other people. So that there are a lot of legal issues, but especially for selling to other U.S. citizens, like that is totally illegal. You can't restrict those transactions.
I can't just go to Italy and buy a villa as an American. There's some kind of control over it.
Can't even go to Mexico.
I had a bill that said if we can't buy land in your country, you can't buy land in our country. It didn't get a hearing, but that's one of the things that I think is being talked about in various parts of the mainland. The point is, we do not have a local housing market. It's an international market. There's money that's big in the east, the west, everywhere, and then we got to compete in our local salaries and our local economy, and it just doesn't mesh. That's the unfortunate reality. We have two. Speaker, you want to go any further?
I don't know the percentage.
You're talking about from the amount of sales, the offshore sales are majority. The majority of sales now are from offshore people. This is from the Maui people, in fact. But in terms of the housing ownership, we are about low 50s, and the mainland is low 60s in terms of, we're mostly renters is the bottom line, because housing is so expensive. Now, which ethnic groups? I know in the Hawaiian community, it's like 33% home ownership. Some other groups are higher, some are lower. But generally, yeah, we've got a real housing problem, and the international money is too big to stop it because of our Constitution. Mr. King in the back, can you stand up and shout out?
Real quick, I've heard that taxes have been reduced, but I also heard that it's kind of phasing in over many years. So is it immediate or is it phasing in?
Speaker?
6-year phase-in.
6 years.
It's a
out when the income goes
Phase out before it ever phase
Is this a tag team, husband and wife, or this is king and king, I think? Speaker, the phasing in?
Yeah, so it starts up with the July 1st, 2025 tax year, but it is phased in over the next, so phased in over 7 years.
So what exactly phases in? Did they slowly reduce, I don't know,
Slow, yeah.
deduction or what is it exactly?
Standard deduction is increased.
The table itself, is the table immediately adjusted or is that phased?
It's phased in. The adjustments are phased in at the bracket level and the standard deduction.
It's a great benefit to the poor. If they take advantage of it, they will end up paying 60% less taxes by 2030 or 2031. For the poor people who pay too much tax, we have been the highest, if not the highest, the second highest in the nation for taxation, and that includes the working poor, the Alice families, as I mentioned. But this gives them a break. It gives them a breathing amount of time. But as I said earlier, we've got to increase their wages. We've got to make sure that the pie is growing and bigger. I just remembered, sir, you had your hand up and I didn't call on you after the other gentleman.
Out-of-state investors, not just out of country, but out of state. Is there any reason why we have a very low property tax rate here in Hawaii, extremely low compared to the mainland? Is there any reason why it couldn't be drastically higher for out-of-state investors?
Speaker, you want to take that? This is Kyle Yamashita, the finance. Have you been on Maui talking about the chair of the finance committee, Kyle Yamashita?
No.
He'd love to make property taxes go up, and state taxes go down, 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 down. I'm not sure I have a position on that other than the only deal we've got in Hawaii are low property taxes. But in terms of the overall economic structure, it's a dilemma.
Supply and demand for local versus out-of-state ownership of homes?
The county should definitely look at adjusting property tax rates for foreign-owned properties. Definitely.
Out-of-state.
On-
For non-Hawaii residents.
Then the constitutional issues.
Non-owner-occupied, local.
What about the empty house tax? They buy it and they keep it empty. That is met constitutional muster.
There's no reason why it couldn't be astronomically higher.
That. Okay, we have someone in the audience who's going to answer that. Peter, take this.
I actually am on the real estate assessment board. Oh, sorry. I'm on the real estate appeals board. Everybody here that owns their house.
Microphone.
Right, everybody here that owns their house is considered a resident, RES. If you rent it out, or it's not your primary residence, then the tax is 4 times what your res is. It's called Res A. So there is a differential between the two.
Between out-of-state ownership?
No. Anybody that is not primary resident.
No, I hear you, and I appreciate that. But I'm talking about make it even higher for non-Hawaii
Yeah,
residents.
I think the constitutionality would throw
Where
that
in the
out.
Constitution is that? I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah. And I'm not either. All I know is that Res A
No, I appreciate that.
is a large portion of the bill.
No, I
But it's over a certain, over $1 million.
Now, is that going to make housing get cheaper? Well, it'll maybe knock a notch down, but housing
Yeah.
is so expensive.
You got to get the council member here next time.
Tommy Waters, you are in demand. Yeah, Tommy comes to. In fact, before I forget it, and I know, look, the speaker has been very generous with his time. Generally, we do like an hour and 15 minutes. We're getting close to that. So those of you who have questions, we're going to have closing questions and a comment. But before that, I want to make an announcement that we are going to have a specific town hall meeting regarding the condo crisis, the insurance crisis. It's on July 2nd. It's at Hahione Elementary School at 6 p.m. Jillian, anything else we should say? Except we forgot the flyers to remind them. It'll be in the newsletter. July 2nd, we're going to have the Gordon Ito, the insurance commissioner there. We'll have the mayor or the mayor's office. The mayor told me he personally wanted to come. We'll have hopefully Tommy Waters. We're still pending his agreement, and I think Senator Chang and Senator Lee haven't got back to us yet either. But it's going to be discussion also with an insurance company. So we hear from what the government's saying, what the insurance companies are saying, and then what the leadership in the city and county, and Governor Green is going to send somebody also. So it's part of a kind of a working group, Speaker, but it's where, you know, part of a democracy is to listen to what you guys are saying, and from there, I think we get a learning curve about what are some of the things that we can fine tune and make better policies to make what your needs are to be met. Having said that, last round of questions. Sir.
Round two. I don't need that.
You
don't? Back to condos. First, I'd like to compliment the legislature, both Democrats and Republicans, for their last couple of years of having bills passed that puts a greater restriction or emphasis on reserve replacements for associations. I think we have a lot of old buildings in this state and certainly on this island. And I think there needs to be more emphasis of reserve replacements and requirements to make sure that condo boards are doing the right thing. My concern is we need more of that, I think. My concern is now with the insurance premium increases, condo associations are trying to find a way to not special assess their owners, and I'm worried about retracting from projects that are critical, being put off, delayed, because of now we're going to have at least 1, 2, maybe 3, 4 years of these increased premiums. And I'm wondering if there's a strategy that we can implement at this legislature to, again, have some oversight with reserve replacements and the importance of that.
Are you saying they're slacking off on what they've
Yes,
committed to?
sir,
Like
I am.
the roof's leaking, and oh, by the way, we'll forget about that and we'll do something else instead of that. Speaker, that's a governance model that's in their court.
So this is like the perennial question with condos at and the legislature is, because the whole concept of a condo is that this is it's a private entity, right? The association, and what kind of enforcement should there be, right, at the condo association level? Should it be self-governing, or do you want a state agency to be in place to receive complaints and adjudicate complaints? You know, and then who's going to pay for that, right? Who pays for that whole operation? So, I mean, these are hard questions, and I don't know what the answer is. We do have a real estate commission at the state level, and that doesn't really like to deal with condo issues. I think they do educational seminars, but they don't really get into the regulatory aspects, even though we keep asking them to start doing that. But yeah, this is an important question, is how going forward, and especially now going forward, how do you resolve disputes that are occurring within condos and at the condo association level? I don't know what the answer is.
Did you know that condo law originated in Hawaii?
Yes.
You know, Sue Savio's father is the progenitor of that legislation. And Sue Savio, by the way, is coming to the town hall meeting on insurance. We have one last question, then we're going to do closing comment. Sir.
I'm the first time attendance to this beer summit, and thank you again for arranging it. We discussed many important issues. We talked about insurance, we talked about the short-term rentals, we talked about the fluoride, we talked about offshore or out-of-state investor, et cetera, et cetera.
Don't forget the sewer in the marina.
Oh, the sewer in the marina, sorry. But my main concern today is talk about HECO.
Oh, good one.
I think that affects all of us here. And I would like to thank your office and you specifically for being a conduit between us, the general public, or the small citizen, to talk with HECO. Okay? When power is out in Hawaii Kai, we can't get online to look at their outdated website. Okay? The other thing is, I'm a senior, obviously, and I subscribe to the T-Mobile, the senior plan. And do you know that T-Mobile tower here in Hawaii Kai, when there's no power, we have no cell service.
That's true.
So if I need like a call a 911, or my neighbor down the street who lives alone by himself and needs oxygen and his oxygen tank is dead, what do I do?
Good question.
Now, I heard about all the things that you kind of relate to us, what Hiko said, but I don't believe a word they say. It's all yada, yada, yada. Okay? Okay? The tree fall on the power line, and they say, oh, that forest is overgrown vegetation. Well, I live in Hawaii Kai for 25 years. We never had power outage. It had rainy days. It had windy days 20 years ago. Okay, the tree falls down 20 years ago. Well, I'll tell you what, they don't manage the property. They don't manage it. They only react. They don't do proact. So again, I encourage your office and encourage your legislature, look into Hiko. Okay?
Yeah.
Because our government have decided to go zero carbon. But however, our infrastructure, our grid is not set up to go zero carbon. Okay? We shut down the coal plant to satisfy the zero carbon policy, but we don't have enough green energy to support what's been taken away. Thank you.
Very well stated. Yeah, he deserves a round of applause. Hiko, I want to encourage you, especially those of you who didn't come. We had a trifecta on Hiko. We had Jim Kelly, who came. He was the public relations guy.
Yada, yada, yada.
We had the head of the Public Utilities Commission, who lives here, Ascension. And we had Clint Churchill, who was a think tank. So we had a trifecta. The point is, we didn't solve all the problems, but let me tell you this, they're teetering on bankruptcy. And if they go bankrupt or a big next era comes and buys them out, you think your rates are high now or the blackouts are bad? It's going to be even worse. The point is, we are Hawaii Kai. We don't think we should have blackouts, but those albizia trees have grown bigger. And we are, Speaker, we've learned from the trifecta, we are at the end of the line of the power on Oahu. It comes from the west side, goes across the Ko'olaus, and then through Waimanalo, through their forests, and then it comes to our nice underground cable. But where it breaks down is outside of Hawaii Kai, and we've got to accept it. But yeah, we got to keep Hiko's feet to the fire, and they may not be around. They got 105 lawsuits just on their own right now, 105 lawsuits. They got all these albizia trees that need to be cut down. They've got plans that they say they're working on. And Speaker, this is where I'm going to jump on against the legislature. There was a securitization bill which was going to allow Hiko to raise rates 3 to 5%. Okay, 3 to 5%. We've had that continually. We said, no, you can't do that, because they were going to borrow money to fix those albizia trees, to fix the Maui infrastructure. And we said we can't do it. So we've made them shake even closer to bankruptcy, because we did not allow them to borrow the money based upon those rate increases. Speaker, you want to address that in terms of this securitization issue? I feel very strongly about that, Hiko. We've jeopardized their stability.
By killing that bill?
Yeah, the bill was killed, right?
Yeah, so the securitization bill died in the last day of the conference period, and I think the concern there was the impact on ratepayers wasn't clear. And the question also was, what would the benefit be for ratepayers? So not just what ratepayers would be paying, but what would be the benefit. So I think that there were some significant questions that just weren't really answered.
Speaker, I would suggest the lady from Maui and the question about what about when all the people say this and say that. The people from Maui said, look, you should be paying us. We shouldn't be paying you their rates. And a lot of people listen to the Maui people, and I think that's part of the reason why it failed. Again, when the people lead, the politicians follow, and I think that's how they got their securitization bill killed.
But why aren't they held accountable? Why does nobody hold Hiko accountable for their lack of taking care of things? People died. We lost everything in Maui because they didn't take care of their water.
And that's exactly why the securitization bill didn't pass, but that's not the public answer that you can hear or see in the newspaper. But it was one of those very, very important factors.
Were they insured? Hiko?
Yeah, but they don't have enough coverage to cover everything. But they have insurance. They have some insurance, yeah.
Okay, we've had a good discussion, and speaker is going to give a closing comment unless there's really a dying need for anything to be done. And I do have one dying need. I have to introduce, it's rarely and ever did we ever have the clerk of the House of Representatives come to Hawaii Kai for a beer summit. I want to introduce Brian Takeshita in the back. Brian, stand up and have a round of applause for you. So if you don't bird dog the speaker, you bird dog Brian Yamashita. Right, Brian?
Should have told us he was here earlier.
He's a gentleman and a scholar. He's diplomatic, but he's very firm. Everybody loves Brian. Closing comments. I want to say it's been very helpful, but I want to encourage you to come out to that town hall meeting July 2nd, 6 o'clock, Hahione Elementary School. We'll have Sue Savio there, Gordon Ito, the insurance commissioner, and I don't know if it would be DB Insurance or Hawaii Insurance, and then the governor and the mayor's thing, and having a good discussion. It may not, I mean, like tonight, we don't have a golden silver bullet to say these are the solutions, but this is the process of how we get in process information. And we're really honored to have somebody like the speaker to come out and share his manao. Closing comment, speaker?
Thank you very much, Rev. Ward, for inviting us to this beer summit.
Without any
Thank
beer?
you very much. No, but thanks everybody for for attending tonight. It was great to see everyone and to hear your questions and your concerns. It is, as you mentioned, it is important for us to hear from residents, not just from our districts, but from other districts as well. So thank you very much for your participation, and I hope that we can do this again. Yeah.
Round 3 next year.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific.
And, have a great summer. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for Speaker Scott Saiki. Aloha.